For a few minutes at least on that evening of 1956, Tesla's white dove returned into manifestation. Who knows what great and special work is being performed by this messenger from a far kingdom? Tesla knows, and perhaps the white dove will return again and again until all humanity becomes aware of the sacred presence of peace on earth. The next part of this story is the Arthur H. Matthews story. It was in October 1956 that Mr. and Mrs. George Van Tassel, accompanied by Art Aho, arrived in New York for a series of lectures on spaceships. According to our usual custom, we arranged an informal gathering for them, with about 30 guests invited to share the evening. As usual, more than 30 showed up, and it was around 2 o'clock in the morning when the last guest reluctantly said farewell. They had listened for hours in spellbound attention to the ready conversation of George Van Tassel about his contacts with space people who had landed their craft on Giant Rock Airport, a landing spot located on the edge of the California desert for the service of private planes. And by the way, I've been to Giant Rock, and I like it out there. And it split recently, which was a great sign. But that's another issue. George Van Tassel, a former pilot and flight test technician, had leased the lonely spot shortly after World War II. He was settled there when Kenneth Arnold made his famous sighting of 9 flying saucers skimming over mountains in the state of Washington, a sighting which brought the subject of spaceships to the attention of the entire world. The Van Tassel family had moved to Giant Rock and lived on the desert nearly 8 years before the space people finally landed a craft late one night on the airport strip. They awakened Mr. Van Tassel, invited him aboard the craft to inspect it, and then arranged for additional contacts by beamed facilities. Over a period of months he learned to use the beam, recording their messages and publishing the material received in a little magazine called Proceedings. The space people, in addition to giving a digest of their philosophy, also gave practical instructions for the building of equipment which they said could be used in the Aquarian age. They told him how to construct a small metal antenna device in the center of a dry desert spot of sand near his living quarters. Although no rain falls during many months and the desert sun beats down without respite, the little metal post keeps a large circular area sufficiently damp for a vegetable garden to flourish. The main piece of equipment suggested to Van Tassel by the space people is to be used for health purposes, and its design is now almost completed. Each part must be made by hand, and the entire unit is to be housed in a domed wooden structure built without the use of any metal. Even wooden pegs must be utilized in place of nails. A person may sit comfortably within the unit for a few minutes, permitting the vibrations to act upon the atoms of the body. This action raises the vibrations of the 4 lower bodies of an individual, freeing the atomic structure of astral debris and permitting electrons to return to their proper orbits and atoms to increase their rate of revolution. And I'll just put a note here, they're talking about the Integratron. That's what George Van Tassel built, and they do have people come to it nowadays, and they do what you call a sound bath with the crystal bowls, but I don't think it ever really was made to do what it was supposed to do. It fell short of being able to do what they hoped it would do. But it's interesting to go to the Integratron and go inside of it. Van Tassel's first built a small model and found that an injured lizard, its head smashed, returned to normal and crawled away completely healed after a brief period in the unit. From the description, this mechanism seemed to be another piece of New Age machinery designed to push forward Ascended Master Saint Germain's program to abolish the concept of sickness and death from this planet. A unit of this sort could be utilized by anyone from time to time and would gradually accustom the individual to live in a high-frequency body. In the July 1956 issue of Proceedings published by Van Tassel, he carried a remarkable story of some trips he had made in projected consciousness to an Air Force base located in the far north. There he found a mountain surrounded by barbed wire and armed guards, and inside the mountain were great caverns filled with a vast amount of machinery together with a modern workshop that was humming with activity. Van Tassel said that many of the machines were stored there by earlier civilizations, some dating back to Lemuria and Atlantis. It is a well-known fact among occultists that when Senat Kimura ordered the submerging of Lemuria and Atlantis, he directed that those lands first be stripped of all valuable machinery, gold, gems, and all records, and these items were stored in mountain caverns in various parts of the world. Several of these storage caves exist in the United States. Many are in South America. All of them are carefully guarded by the hierarchy and protected with a wall of light. It is utterly impossible for anyone to gain entrance to one of these caverns unless the hierarchy wishes that to happen in order to serve some phase of the divine plan. If the cavern in the far north was discovered by our government forces, it was a planned discovery arranged by the hierarchy. In this case, it was arranged in order to cast the burden of guilt on these government authorities who insist that flying saucers do not exist, that they are weather balloons, or as one brainy scientist claims, temperature inversions. Someday it will be revealed that during the years when the government tried to maintain this phony screen of secrecy around flying saucers, that high brass within the military forces, supported by American taxpayers, were in full possession of complete information on flying saucers from outer space and on flying saucers stored in caverns by earlier civilizations. All of this information was withheld from the public because from the beginning of the present flying saucer era, the space people made it abundantly clear to all government leaders throughout the world that they have come to the earth to abolish war first and to establish a new way of life after the house cleaning. Naturally, if there is to be no war, there will be no need for a military machine. Materialist and allied bureaucrats, supported by captive taxpayers, under constant threat of penalties for non-payment of taxes, have known for years that the space people plan to eliminate the military at the first opportunity. The space people have been most considerate about the whole matter. They said bluntly but firmly, if you cannot see your way clear to peaceful living without some sort of national defense, then use the Tesla anti-war machine during this interim period when new international and interplanetary relationships are being adjusted. You men of Earth have no time to waste in fighting and building of weapons. You must live abundantly and have plenty of leisure time in which to study and prepare yourself for the higher path of evolution which you must pursue. Use machines such as the Tesla anti-war machine to automatically serve you. Do not use human bodies and souls for defense, for you are only adding to your already overwhelming load of karma by so doing. Many years ago, the disciples of Master Saint Germain were informed by the great adept himself that large numbers of spaceships were stored away in various caverns dating back to Lemurian and Atlantean manufacture, and that these ships could be reconditioned and put into service as soon as the general public could grasp the significance of Aquarian Age plans. Let the reader not think for one instant that news of this sort did not reach the ears of the military in a quick flash. Saint Germain was well aware, even when he gave the information, that the dark forces had their spies right within the groups of disciples of the light. The modern Judas type is extremely active. Every military group in the world today is riddled with members of the dark forces, pledged to serve the causes of ignorance, savagery, war, and confusion. Originally, churchianity was the center for dark force activity, and later the political and economic arenas served as a focus for evil. These three centers still serve, and another is coming up to a strong second lead right behind the military, and that is the whole field of medicine and associated interests such as pharmaceuticals. Said that wrong.